Rimpoche, so where were you born, La? Can you tell us about a little bit about your
Yes.
Lasla? Lasla.
I was born in India.
Okay,
Yeah, I was
Lasla.
born in India, but my parents, they're Bhutanese. So I became a Bhutanese. You know. you know. Uh, so that's that. Um, when I was a few years old, I was recognized by, the different masters and saying that you are Kalu Rimpoche reincarnation and saying that you have a great future, you have a big responsibilities and put me on a very high throne. When I look back, it's quite embarrassing because I was sitting on the throne, I was falling asleep. Meanwhile, they was telling other people saying that Kalu Rimpoche, he's a reincarnation and then, of a great master. And it's quite embarrassing when I look back. But there was a lot of uh, different stages in my life where I was living like a prince until the age of 7, because it was my late father. He was the nephew of the previous Kalu Rimpoche and also the head of the whole organization of the Kalu Rimpoche. So I was living like a prince until the age of 7. Like an example, wherever I go, there was always an escort by him, and by the lamas and then other people constantly, day and night. And also not studying, obviously. I could tell the teacher when I want to study and when I don't want to study. To that extent, I was a very, very spoiled kid. But still, there was constantly a dharma connection, constantly being in the monastery and being in the temple and so on. That was never a part of, out of my life. That was always part of my life. But then when I was 7 years old, my late father, he passed away all of a sudden. And then, then the whole organization collapsed. It's a little bit like if you read a little bit of history, and then some kind of power structure is so much centralized in a few people, and when the few people is kind of tragic happens and everything collapses in a very short period of time. So I went from living like a prince as a Rinpoche, a little bit like the legendary, like the Kalu Rinpoche, very rich family, the very rich Rinpoche, and whatever you call it, whatever you imagine it. It went from that to how do I call it, a little bit like a Rinpoche in the street, because when people see weakness in your organization, they take advantage no matter what. So the first lesson is don't be compassionate. Don't be compassionate. You have to be tough. You have to be tough. You have to hold your ground. That is very important in life. You cannot be, show your weakness to other people. You cannot be compassionate all the time. You have to hold your ground. And then only, you have to practice compassion in your heart. You have to practice compassion in your heart, but personality-wise, you have to hold your ground. That's the first lesson I understood in my life. Because if you become, lack of empathy and compassionate from your heart also, and that makes you a very miserable person, a very selfish and very miserable person. So you cannot help other people, that's fine, that's temporary. But you have a responsible of your own life, So you have to practice compassion in your mind, like an example, the Cherizic practice, like where you visualize the compassion of the 6 realms and, circulating with all the radiance. But, but in a real life, you have to hold your ground, you need to have a principle. So I went from being a Rinpoche that is very spoiled, to a Rinpoche who has absolutely nothing. The monastery belongs to some group of people. The Dharma center, we had more than 100 centers. So all the majority of the Dharma center was like privatized for themselves with their own personal interest, and then your whole, family took whatever they want for themselves. So you're a little bit like, in a limbo, a little bit like in a bardo. So I experienced the bardo before the bardo, You don't know where you are, what you're doing, what is the purpose of life. And then I was studying in another monastery for at least from 1998 to 2008. I completed my 3 years retreat. During that time, I was, I've gone through a little bit of abuse, So there was a little bit of mental challenges that I had to go through during that time. And then, but still I carried on with my life. I never had this, imagination of oh, because people come to me and say that, oh, you're Kalu Rimpoche, you're a big master. But I don't feel that, You feel slightly homeless, So to that extent, it reached in my life. And then when I went to the 3 years retreat, I was just, expecting my traditional religious duties and nothing much. And then when I came out of the retreat, all of a sudden there were so many people who came and said, now Kalu Rimpoche came out of 3 years retreat, as if they have never left from the beginning, Yeah. I was like, wow, what a switch, I became from absolutely nobody, of completely forgotten, to, to the point that they're so desperate that they want me so much, Then I was thinking, wow, it's too good to be true. Then I travel around the world, but each time I travel around the world, they want me to be a Rinpoche, little bit like a puppet. They want you to say things in their benefit, and then whenever it comes to their property or the organization, it's off limit. But they teach other people samaya, devotion, karmic, but you're not allowed to say certain things. To that extent, I struggle a lot. But then I keep on pushing it, and so now I oversee 46 meditation center. In the beginning, it was very difficult because when you are Rinpoche, you had a monastic training, but you don't have a management training. You're a little bit like, you do good, you do prayer, be kind, put the bumpa in people's head, everything will be fine. That's how you are brought up. But when you enter to the real world, it's not like that. I receive equal advice from the lawyer as well as my guru. So that sort of a harsh reality, happened. And then I was going through how do you call it, a depression. A sense of hopelessness again and again. And then I became broke many times. Because you try to invest everything you got to the pillar of your organization, so you try to push forward as much as you can, So there was a point that I was eating how do you call it? In Bhutan, you eat coca, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. There was a point between 2013 and 14, I was eating YY, to that point, and because all the centers, everybody want to hold it for themselves, they don't want to support the monastery. So then I had to reshuffle everything top to bottom, and then you had to be logical, you have to be realistic, and at the same time you have to be compassionate, so you cannot be ruthless, you have to be compassionate, you have to be tolerant, you have to be reasonable, so I think that is very important in life, no matter the status in life, I think it's always good to be reasonable, it's always good to be compassionate, it's always good to be tolerant, never lose your inner peace, never lose your inner innocence, regardless of the external challenges and struggle. Always believe in the truth, and that is very important. No matter what, it will prevail. So that's that. And having core principle in yourself is very important.
Blessed Rinpoche. Again, this is a very human question to a spiritual master. I think we have to ask ourselves, but then sometime asking Rinpoche will get more insights and maybe more wisdoms from it. Rinpoche, do you have fear?
I do have fear, a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia, a lot of paranoia, a lot of fear, but how I cope is different. I'm not saying that, oh, look at me, I'm Rinpoche, I have no fear, I'm perfectionist. I'm not saying that. I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect human being, but I have a meaningful purpose in my life, to do whatever I can to benefit others. And there's constant fear here and there all the time, and different definition of fear as well. But but I overcome with the meditation and the practice and so on.
Oh, Lasla.
Yes.
Lasla. So in that sense, Rinpoche, would you like to run down a little bit about how do you start your day? in terms of your practice and everything in between the days, and how do you even end the day and retire to your sleep life?
To be honest, I'm not going to start with I am sitting in the meditation box and doing the 7-bowl offering in the morning, and then I don't eat anything before the Green Tara prayers. I'm not going to say that.
That's all.
Okay.
But you have done that one time, of course.
Yes. When I was 14 years old, I went to 3 years retreat, and then I came out when I was 18 years old. So it was like 3 years and 9 months of retreat. I solitary retreat. So that during that time, it was very intensive. And the first year was terrible, Everybody was doing a puja and prayer, and I was just sleeping in the meditation box, I was like, why am I here, What is the purpose of my life, The world is moving on, and I'm left behind in this box. What am I doing? I have the same view every day. You have this, on the right side, on my left side, I have this little bit of hill with a little bit of bamboo, And I see this view every day, and I'm sick and tired of this view. And then you look at all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they look the same every day. They are not talking to you, they are not accompanying you. And they're like, what am I doing with my life? You start to question yourself, and because you're 14 years old. Like just before that you had a little bit of laptop, little bit of television, World Cup and so on, the FIFA cricket and so on. And then when you're in the retreat, you're a little bit isolated from it, and you feel like the world is moving on, and you are stuck in time. It's a terrible feeling. But starting from the second year and the third year, then I became more passionate with the yoga and reading the history of the different masters and so on. So of course, later on just became more dedicated. But in my life, it depends, like if I'm doing a retreat with my students, in the Dharma centers, in the monastery, then there's that routine, where you wake up at a certain time. But in my personal life, right now, I just do my simple daily prayer, do my push-up and exercise, running, to be healthy, physically and mentally both, and do a little bit of meditation, read a little bit of books, and then scroll through Instagram and Facebook. Who's saying what? Yeah.